Good morning. This annual meeting will now come to order. May I ask Laura to please open the meeting with a prayer?
Thanks, Tom. Well, thank you all for being here and for staying. Last week we celebrated, as you know, most of you, the poetry of Emily Dickinson. And she famously also wrote that there is no frigate like a book. And I would say there is no frigate like the First Congregational Church of Old Lyme. And as you see all the places we travel. So let us pray. Holy One of many names, we give thanks for this beloved community we call FCCOL. Bless us as we gather this day to listen and witness to and honor the alphabet of grace among us, those acts of love, devotion, and creative effort that have energized us and fueled our kinship and ministries this past church year. Help us to make room for one another. Make room for the unexpected. Make room for appreciation, for the miracle, for the new, and even the uncomfortable. Guide our discussions today as we listen attentively to one another with generosity and hospitality, humility, and joy. Yes, O God, let us not forget the joy. And in all our expressions, may we remember that your Spirit guides and abides with us as we seek to do justice, speak kindness in earnest, and walk humbly in the light for the well-being of all of our neighbors. As we say together in one voice, Amen.
The Assistant Church Clerk, Dr. Greg Hack, will now read the call to the meeting.
Good morning, all. This 358th annual meeting of the First Congregational Church of Old Lyme is hereby called on this 29th day of January, 2023, held in the Meeting House at 2 Ferry Road, Old Lyme, Connecticut. The purpose of the meeting shall be to receive the reports of the ministers, boards, and committees, and the church officers for the year 2022, to approve the church budget for the year 2023, to receive and approve the report of the nominating committee, to elect officers and board members for the coming year, to conduct such other old or new business as shall properly come before the meeting. Whereas the notices of this meeting have been properly announced at the worship services, posted in the church, and weekly emails and bulletins to the congregation, and whereas there is present, thankfully, of a quorum of far greater than 40 church members, the meeting may now officially proceed. Thank you.
I would like to now ask that we read the meeting minutes from the previous year's meeting.
I make the motion to waive the reading of the minutes.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. There seems to be a motion to waive the reading of the previous minutes. Well, and that was, of course, immediately seconded by, I think I saw 14 hands. Anyway, the meeting minutes are printed on pages 4 and 5 of the annual report. Is there any discussion about that? Then all in favor of waiving the reading of those minutes, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? That seems to be pretty universal. So we'll waive the reading of the minutes. And now I'd like to request a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. And I have a second. It's moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any discussion about those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? Okay, and we have officially done the logistics of approving the previous meeting's minutes. It's a little strange that I'm here. My name is Tom Scherer. I rarely even attend these meetings, so why am I chairing this? Well, I received a call about a year ago from the nominating committee requesting that I join the official church council. Now, when I got that the first question that came to mind, I've been in this church 30 years. What is the church council? Does anybody, I'd never even heard of the church council, but I agreed because I was told they only meet a couple times a year. So this was all fine, but when I got there, I found I was chair of the church council. And there's a lot of strings that go with that. You're immediately like on the nominating committee, and also, more horrifically, you have to chair the annual meeting when you're on. So this has been terrible. I don't know about chairing meetings, but I read up on it this week. I went on the internet and read Martha's, there's a whole sequence, Martha's Rules of Order. So I thought I'd be all set, but I got here this morning to find out that the church uses Robert's Rules of Order, not Martha's. So this was a huge problem. I think Roberts was more a military guy, so I'm going to try to put a lot of abbreviations and acronyms and stuff in to make this a little more military. Still, the whole thing has the potential for disaster. But fortunately for me, I was handed this sheet. Okay, so this is conduct of the annual meeting. It was prepared by Bob McCracken. Yeah. And as you know, Bob McCracken has officiated at more of these meetings than there are stars in the sky. He's an internationally recognized expert in church meetings. So I'm going to adhere very closely to this Bob sheet, which can be our first abbreviation in the minutes. We'll call this BS. And what I'll try to do is just to get this right, I'm going to try to immerse myself in BS through this whole meeting. All right. All right. So anyway, we're now going to hear from the ministers and the board and committee chairs to summarize their 2022 reports. And I'll ask that as I call people up here, they talk into this microphone. Some of you don't really need the microphone, but we're asking that you do speak loudly into the microphone because we're trying to record this and it'll be helpful for our technical people. So, let's see. The first item in the agenda would be the minister's report. So if I could have Steve and Lauren Carleen please fill us in on that.
Well, pity the poor soul who has to follow Tom Scherer. I can't believe you didn't want to read the minutes from last year. I can't believe you didn't want to do that. Well, listen, I essentially gave you my minister's report in today's sermon, and so I don't have a whole lot more that I wish to add. You've heard me say most of it already. It can be distilled into 3 statements. We're in a strong position right now. We have some challenges before us, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of FCCOL. Now, one thing that I didn't mention in the sermon that deserves a special shout out right now is the roof that we managed to put on the meeting house this year. That was a major, major project, one that I've dreaded for a long time. But because of your generosity and the generosity of many others as well, we managed to do it without going into debt. And I think the congregation deserves a huge thank you for that, for gifts large and small. But so do our property committee, foremost among them Russell Learned and Bob McCracken. Russell and Bob, thank you for the work that you did guiding all those small and large details of that project. But that's a really huge thing that we need to acknowledge. One further strength that we have is our incredible staff. And unless I'm missing something, I might be, but unless I'm missing something, we all actually like each other. And we enjoy one another's company. And so I am incredibly grateful to have Carlene and Laura as clergy colleagues. I don't take it for granted that I might have clergy colleagues that I enjoy working with all the time and work well together with. I think not all churches have that, but we have that here. And I'm also so incredibly thankful for Bob and for Simon, for Odile and for Julie and for Mark and for Dee. I don't think I'm missing anyone. For, well, last but not least, Joni May. I don't know that Joni's here today. This was a year of transition as well, so we do continue to miss having Mary Tomasetti with us, and we also miss having Lisa Doggart around the staff meeting table, but it really is an amazing group of talented and dedicated people who staff this place, and we can be grateful for all that they do. And then in addition to each of the staff members, there are each of the people that we're going to be hearing throughout the course of this meeting, all of the volunteers who chair our boards and committees that you'll be hearing from shortly. Churches depend upon the sheer goodwill of dedicated volunteers. And so I am just thrilled and thankful for each and every one of them, along with everybody who leads by serving on our boards and our committees. I'll say it again, I said it earlier, but our volunteer network here at this church has not been shredded. And that's something that we can all be grateful for. Now, I'm going to end my portion of this meeting by asking all of us to do something slightly unusual. As a way of affirming who we are and who we strive to be, I want to draw our attention to a statement that's included every single week in our bulletins, just below our order of worship. And if you're like me, week after week after week, you see it and you learn to scan it or maybe just ignore it altogether. But the words are really, really important. They were crafted by our deacons more than a decade ago, probably about 15 years ago, and they remain, I think, a foundational piece of who we are as a community. And so what I want to do is invite all of you to rise right now, and I hope you still have your bulletins. And I want us to read these words together. And I want us to read them essentially to one another, because we're all members of this community, and they affirm, I think, who we wish to be. So let's read these together. We thank you for worshiping with us, following the life and teachings of Jesus. We are a church that strives to be a place of grace, welcoming all, regardless of theological expression, age, race, gender, sexual identity, national origin, or financial means. In our church constitution, we recognize that each member shall have the undisturbed right to follow the Word of God according to the dictates of his or her own conscience, under the enlightenment of the Holy Spirit. The First Congregational Church of Old Lyme, established in 1665, cherishes this proud pilgrim tradition. We are honored by your presence among us, and we invite you to help us become what we endeavor to be. Now, you may be seated, but I'll close simply by saying, I invite you in the following, however long this meeting lasts, and in the following year, the year to come, to help us become more of who we endeavor to be. But more than that, thank you for making us who we already are. That's what I have.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we are going to hear the church clerk's report. We can abbreviate that CC for the minutes. Now, that would be offered by Joni May, except Joni's not here today, so Henry has agreed to step in and give us that report. Thank you.
Hi, Joni. She's watching from home. Yes. The church clerk's report is on page 49. Interestingly, all of the things that Steve has been saying is borne out by these numbers. If you turn to that page and just take a look at our active membership has stayed steady. It, in fact, increased slightly to the end of last year, 2022, up from the year before. By confirmation, number 9, confirmation is every other year, so we got a little bump last year on that. The new members on profession of faith is last year there were 2 new member meetings. Then you go down to the losses. We have death, of course, transfer to inactive status. The ministers go through the church membership and friends list each year and delete those who we know are no longer active. Membership terminated by relocation or request. That typically is maybe 1/2 of that number, half of 2, 3, 4 people asked to be taken off the list. The others are people who have moved, and they, of course, are removed from the list. The baptisms, the marriage ceremonies, all are in line with what we have had in the past. So, thank you. I won't ask for questions because I don't know the answers.
I think in the, you asked for the minister's report, and I got that from Steve, but I think we also are going to hear from both Carlene and from Laura, so if they would like to, I don't see them. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to read my report because you can do that later this afternoon if you want with your feet up. This past week was one of the many busy, inspiring weeks here where everything happens every day of the week. There are cars outside our church. One day, Kathy Mathis did a training for some of us on Red Cross skills and certification. There was the food pantry. There was the diaper bank. There were meetings about Sunday school. Our last Sunday night, some of our middle and high schoolers had a meeting with tacos. Preparations for this meeting, planning for what's ahead. Tree of Life meeting with our leadership for our upcoming trip, February 15th through March 3rd. A Witness Stones meeting. The Witness Stones project, as you probably know, continues as a multi-year collaboration with our church and the library and the Flogers Museum and the school system. And all along Lyme Street, we have honored those who have been enslaved in this community with witness stones, and that will continue for 3 more years. So that was one of the meetings I went to, and as well as staff meeting with our wonderful staff, and Steve named all of those, and I would also name Bill Slavinsky, who was kind enough to always open up, close up, run and look for something that somebody has lost, and always is there taking care of our building. So many thanks to Bill Slavinsky. Also this year we said goodbye to Lisa Dargett, our Sunday school director, who was here for 7 years. And we welcomed Dee Andrews, who has been an amazing addition to our community. You're going to hear from her in a little bit when she shares the youth ed report. And she started in October. She was already coming here, so had a sense, always an important volunteer at our church prior to this, but it's been great to have her incredible creativity and organizing. And so that's been a wonderful gift this year so far. And also to so many of our families and parents and fellow teachers. Also, I would just mention that you're going to hear a little bit about our adult programming, and we've had some wonderful adult forums and other programs. Bible study. We give such thanks to Becky, who taught Bible study here for 17 years and then handed over the torch to Steve and myself, and that has been a gift to be able to continue with this year. Overall, I just want to offer gratitude and thank you all for the shared ministry that we all participate in and share in together.
Thank you, Laura. And Carlene has a few words for us.
Very few, but you can read all the ministers' reports in greater detail. One of the wonderful things about being a minister here is that we all do all things, so it's a great joy to serve here. My primary responsibility is pastoral care and missions, and I think missions is the engine of our generosity. If you look at the bottom of page 28, you'll see that in addition to the $72,000 that the mission board gave away to all kinds of worthy organizations, the money that we raised through the work of this church was almost $250,000. You can see the detail broken down there, but you are an engine of faith and generosity, and I'm really grateful for that. There are, on any given week, I bet more than 100 volunteers in this building. There are at least 50 just in the food pantry alone. Lee Whitaker has done a wonderful job chairing the board of missions, and I'm thankful to Julie Kuja and Charlie Hosley, and you'll see all this in the report. Kathy Gentry for all the work they do with the New London Soup Kitchen. The diaper bank people are working constantly, and it's an ever-growing need. I just want to end by saying that Steve, Laura, and I all do pastoral visits. Help us know when someone you know or love needs our support. And lastly, please tell the office how to communicate with you. Lots of you have discontinued landlines, and we need to know how you want to be contacted. So thank you. It's been a huge honor to serve this church, not for 358 years, but a long time.
Thank you, Carlene. So next we're going to hear the Board of Deacons reports, or BD, and I happen to be married to a deacon, so I know how much work they do. A lot of the work they do is out, and you see it happening every weekend, but a lot of it is behind the scenes stuff. A lot of you don't know that after every coffee hour, after every potluck, the deacons get together in the kitchen and they eat all those leftovers, to avoid food waste. So that's the sort of dedication I'm talking about here. Ellen will give us the update.
Yeah, I'm Ellen Calkins for the BD, Board of Deacons. I especially want to thank our outgoing deacons this year. Tim Hildner, Deb Hemingway, and Martha Gibson have been just crucial parts of our team, and I thank them, and I don't know what committees they're going to, but whoever it is, they'll be lucky to have them. But they do need to remember that once a deacon, always a deacon. So I also want to thank others who've helped us stepping up with ushering and communion and welcoming folks. Please do let us know if you'd like to step in on any of those roles. Around here, it's pretty much all hands on deck. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So next we're going to hear from the Board of Stewardship, or we use that one. Let's BOS, thank you. We'll go with BOS. I think I'm actually lucky there's no Board of Selectmen here. So Sandy Long will give us an update on that.
Good morning. I hope you'll read the Stewardship Annual Report on page 37. I want to start by thanking everyone. We ask Steve, often interrupting his vacation, to produce an inspiring message as the basis for the annual campaign. John Kiker provided us a very comprehensive communications plan, and in the office, Odile produces beautiful visual enhancements of our messages. Julie and Bob maintain meticulous financial records. And special thanks to our indispensable volunteer, Joni May. As the sign on her desk says, she is indispensable, and she manages our whole operation beautifully. And my grateful thanks go to every member of the Board of Stewardship. They're listed on page 37. Everybody steps up very cheerfully at a moment's notice. In fact, I happened to be at the Middlesex Hospital Clinic, and Wayne Mounts was there. And after he said hello, he said, "Do you need me?" He thought I was bringing letters for him to sign, I guess. I don't But that's the kind of spirit that has been in our Board of Stewardship. And I last night debated about saying the next part of this, but today I feel like I've more or less been given permission because Steve's sermon addressed this. I have a concern, which I think probably every Board of Stewardship member has had for 358 years, that the Board of Stewardship's job is getting harder. There's been a trend of a decline in the number of pledges. Since 2009, the number of people who pledge, the number of people who make a financial commitment to the church's annual operating budget has declined. Since 2009, it was 396. Last year, it was 308. That's about a 25% decline. Over these years, the Board of Stewardship has considered or tried various tactics to reverse the trend, to increase the number of pledgers. The church needs financial support to carry out all of the work that you see described in the annual report. And you saw this morning when Laura asked anyone who had served in any way on the boards and committees that conduct such an enormous amount of work that this church performs. We have to have financial support as well. So I hope that all of you will give some thought to solving this issue and will share your thoughts with the Board of Stewardship. I have faith that this great church family can perform miracles.
Thank you, Sandy. Next, we're going to hear from the Board of Youth Education, or BI, from Dee Andrews. I think you know, in addition to God's Neighborhood, the Junior Pilgrim Fellowship, and the Senior Pilgrim Fellowship, I guess the rumor is that we're about to start an FCCOL University. Is that for this afternoon, for Sunday school graduate studies. So please.
Hi, I think the best part of the annual meeting is people stand up here and they get announced so I can actually see names and put them beside. So my name is Dee Andrews. It's just the letter D with a period. Sometimes it's an exclamation point, and sometimes you want me to go away. I came on board in October to the coordinator position for youth education, and I'm really grateful to the whole organization. I'm grateful for the opportunity to Laura and to Mary for their incredible support and patience, because it's not been easy to step into Lisa's shoes. She left quite a legacy. And when I when I was reviewing, my notes, I decided to actually start at the end, because we, as the youth education crew, are really excited. We learn from our students. We look to broaden their experience. They meet our excitement and add to it. We invite you to join our lessons with the monthly lesson plan. We print that in our newsletter. We put that in your pew box, and we make announcements on the back of your bulletin. I really invite you to take a look at this in your pews, because a lot of people don't know that it's there even, much less that it includes information. So it usually follows our plan for the month and what we're going to do, and it includes little prayers that you can say at home, just to make sure that you're kind of integrating our message with the message that you are talking to your children at home after classes. So I invite you to partner with us in the education of the youth. The year, as I said, has been a year of transition. The participants are evolving, as is the program. The students are responding and they're thriving. The teachers, thank you, thank you, thank you. There's not enough thanks for the volunteers who go down in the morning and teach our students. They roll with it, they change on a moment's notice, they can adapt to anything, and I am grateful. The students are engaged, our senior classes help out with the teaching, and they are amazing. I couldn't do this without them. My gratitude is just overwhelming for them. So this year our theme is the Deep Blue Seas, stories of care for one another and the earth. And students learn weekly about stewardship of the earth, as well as how that aligns with our Bible studies. And that's why it's important that we integrate all that information, so they take that home with them. On Sunday morning, we have 4 classes. We usually have 6, 7, or 8 students in each class, which makes it a full house. The energy downstairs is overwhelming, to the point that I needed to close doors this morning so we could hear each other talk. We're active, the students are active, they're eager, they're engaged, they're clear about what they want, which is really important, because they come to me and they say, I need this. Where is that? They're always respectful, but they are clear about what they need, which means to me that they're really getting something out of it, and that it's a partnership and not a tug of war. Inspired by the 2022 production of our Christmas pageant, plans are already underway for more student involvement in the development of an original production in 2023, thanks to our amazing director, Gavin Lodge. It has just been amazing. Our senior youth group and our junior youth group have been involved in a number of service projects: the breakfast run, cooking for the meal center, beach cleanup. I'll let you read the rest of that. While I was waiting for children's time to start this morning, not knowing what Steve was going to talk about, because I didn't read ahead, I read on the wall, "We are honored by your presence among us, and we invite you to help us become what we endeavor to be." We invite you to be part of what we endeavor to be for the children of this organization and this congregation. Please partner with us and join with us in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Our next report is from the Board of Adult Education, BAY, and that'll be given by Mike Gentry. And from what I understand, the board, are you going to be doing that? Okay, Mariette's going to be doing that. And from what I understand, and maybe you can fill this out, the board has decided to put more of a celebrity spin on the adult forums this year. I think they already, from what I heard up in the base section, I think you already have Vladimir Putin, Tom Brady, and Taylor Swift lined up. So this is going to be a big year. Mariette?
They're starting the celebrity with me. You all know that the Adult Education Committee is responsible for the adult forums. Every Sunday well, it isn't every Sunday anymore. It used to be every Sunday, but now it's sort of as opportunity allows. Last February, they did a nice, actually Mike wrote a very nice synopsis on page 39. You can read it all. They did a nice, they showed a movie with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, thank you. And then afterwards had a discussion with Paul Verlaine while he was here about the relationship with that in South Africa. They have produced 4 separate congregational conversations about living with uncertainty. They used, one was called Living with Uncertainty, the war in Ukraine, techniques on coping with uncertainty, and the group discussion on techniques and people's individual experiences about that. And then, again, as Laura said about the Bible study, they've taken over for Becky, and they're continuing that. Laura's going to be starting up her Writing from the Well program this summer. She did that last winter. And the last thing was, here on my notes, the annual Mercy Center retreat, which Laura led last October and will be again this summer. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariette. So next, our report is from the Board of Mission, or BM. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, Lee's going to do that. And again, this is maybe just a rumor, but you could address it, please. I understand that this year we sent missionaries to the city of Torrington, is that right? To, as this says, convert the Torringtonians over to Congregationalism. So, no, I may have that wrong.
Okay, I don't know if I like that BM acronym, but okay. Anyway, in 2022, we worked to dispense a little over $72,000 to support our local and international mission partners. We did a lot of research. We visited a lot of partner representatives to assess their needs and make sure they still need our support. The report mentions 41% to support the New London region. Since the report, we sent an additional $4,000 to Homeless Hospitality Center, bringing their total to $9,000, and the percentage in the New London area is about 47%. The agencies we support are listed on page 38, so I won't list them now. We continue to support the United Church of Christ, partnership support, mission education, and international support. The Board of Missions did a great job with a great group of folks, including Carlene's wisdom, and we dispensed the funds that we were allocated. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Lee. The next report is from Immigration. That's an easy one. I'm just going to go with I on that. And that's going to be from Eric Johansson.
Thank you. Last spring, I became chair of the Immigration Committee following the resignation of Lena Tuck, who tried to do it from Massachusetts but couldn't. And Lena became chair of this when Malik and Sahida moved into the basement of this church. And She formed incredible relationships and a wonderful framework for the committee's work. And I know the congregation is very grateful for her work and dedication in developing and managing this important ministry for FCCOL. That said, overall, this past year, the committee's work has been more subdued and quieter. We've continued to accompany individuals to ICE appointments, helped coordinate legal services, and provided financial assistance to individuals and families to help them in their efforts. We are an on-call type of ministry that reflects the undocumented person's needs as they arise and as they are communicated. This congregation values and supports the community's immigration efforts, and we're grateful and proud to be a part of them. So thank you for that. Lena was an immigrant from Brazil. I was an immigrant from Norway when I was very young. I was called a resident alien for the first 8 years of my life. But anyway, it doesn't take you to be an immigrant to be a part of this committee. So we appreciate all that you all do. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So our next report is from the South Lyme Union Chapel, the acronym SLUC. Anyway, Karen will bring us up to speed on that. I'll work on that one too.
Well, I guess this is your slucky day. Nice to come and speak to you again. I continue in my role as first trustee, and as you know, we suffer kind of what you're suffering from, lower attendance and financial support, but we're trying to stay in there. We reopened in October of 2021 after the pandemic. We've had live services since then, and we have a wonderful minister, Becky Francisco, who creates very nice services, scripture-based. We have music, wonderful sermons, and she preaches to a small group of us. Most weeks there's maybe 12 to 14 people that take the service, but you know, it's a small, what I wanted to say, or what I wanted to stress here is, if you know of somebody who really would benefit from that small type of intimate service, we've really become close friends, and it's a type of thing where it's not right for everybody, but for some people it's the best thing. In the course of our year, we do, I'm trying to think of our activities. I was going over my report and I realized I left a few things out, but we have the carol sing with the students from select singers from Lyme High School. We were back this year for a live carol sing, and actually we filled the entire chapel, and it was a wonderful event. It was on Sunday, December 18th. And during the year, I'm trying to think, we modeled something after you. We really liked your soup night that you had when you used to have the pottery bowls, and well, we decided to do, let us have a soup night. We advertised it. We actually had about 25 people come during Lent. It was on a weeknight, and our members made different soups, and we were just really thrilled that other people besides our regulars came in the door and enjoyed it. It was at absolutely no cost. We just made soups and put some advertisement around, and we did get a good group. This summer, we have a more aging population, and we were moving away. I don't know if you're aware of it, but for a number of years, the chapel was the backbone of the White Elephant Sales hot dog booth, the food booth. It was run entirely by people from the South Lyme Union Chapel. We don't put up signs, but that's who ran it. And what happened was the people in our chapel contacted the church and said, you know, we really don't have enough people to run it, like I said, the aging population. And your church did plan to staff it, and at the last minute, they really needed help. So again, the calls went out through the chapel, and they did the shopping, but we ran the food booth this year for the White Elephant Sale. Trying to think of, well, we also do, Julie Kuja has been a big help, again, with our aging population. At one point, we went to the New London Meal Center and brought the whole meal and put it out with chapel workers, but we can no longer do that. In the last 3 or 4 years, she has supported us, and we make arrangements with her to provide one of those dinners. Financially, we provide it. We have most of the food either delivered or picked up by her. But I just wanted to say that I don't want to belie the point, but we are struggling financially. I mean, you can imagine with a small group of attendants, and we're looking for ways to improve our ability to remain open in the years to come. And I'm thinking that I like what Stephen Youngkite said when he said, "Help us become more than we endeavor to be." And that's true also for the chapel. And I'm thinking our trustees have been talking, and one of our goals this year is maybe to create an activity that both of our churches can participate in. Because we're part of you, even though it seems like we're really not, because we're so far away. If you look at the whole history, the chapel at one point was a pretty vibrant and connected part of this larger church. Well, thank you very much, and thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So our next report is from the Ladies Benevolent Society, or Ladies BS. Anyway, Jane Meralda has that for us. Is Jane here? Okay, Sandy can do that.
Jane Meralda has done a report on page 47, and our treasurer, Mary Ann Baez, has produced her usual meticulous report on page 48. In spite of Mary Ann's time-consuming caregiving to her husband, Sam, she's produced this wonderful report. Ladies Benevolent Society board is made up of men and ladies, and Jane mentions that Judy Simmons, I don't know if Judy's still here, but she retired this year from the board. I think it was after 18 years of service, and she, in a labor of love, produced a history of LBS. This relatively small group of men and women perform an amazing amount of work. 6 luncheons with programs to encourage Christian fellowship. I believe our church has made one of the largest single donations to the church World Service Blanket Drive, which Hildegard conducted. We usually have a fundraising Haitian dinner for the Crosby Foundation. We cook and serve a meal at New London Community Meal Center. And under Eunice Taylor's leadership, the ladies who stitch are constantly stitching, creating thousands of beautiful items and raising just thousands and thousands of dollars. Their work is fabulous. And of course, there is the holiday sale and Elephants in Winter sale. And the biggest, the White Elephant sale, which involves not just the LBS board, but hundreds of volunteers under the leadership of Bob Davis and his team. All of us on LBS board felt so relieved that our activities could resume after COVID. In spite of all the hard work, I think everybody felt a great spirit in finally having the White Elephant sale again this year. And we hope for another great one in 2023. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. The next report is from the Board of Trustees, the BT. Dan Wren's going to give that, and we've heard quite a bit from about all the work the trustees have done in the last year, and the big one, of course, the Meeting House roof. But there's been little discussion of arguably even the larger project, which certainly consumed more of the church's resources, and that was the complete redecoration of Mark's office back here, which maybe Dan.
Thanks, Tom. So the full report from the trustees is bound here. I think it's 12 to 14, and I won't bore you by going through all of it, but we did have a lot of different things going on, and I have a lot of people to thank. But really briefly, Henry and the Endowment Committee, Tom Grant and the Barbara Smith and Henry May on the Preservation Committee, especially Russell and the committee that's in charge of our properties. A lot of work from those folks. John Kiker and the Communications Committee, and all of the Board of Trustees who worked, it was a lot of work this year. As Steve already said, I really wanted to especially thank Russell and Bob for the work on the roof. Behind the scenes, Dave Spears works with the Properties Committee. We had a lot of activities going on in the various properties, and so thanks to Dave and Mark Testori also. I'd like to extend some thanks from the Board of Trustees to him for keeping things running behind the scenes. Outgoing trustees, Harvey Beeman and Dale Bernardoni, thank you very much. Extraordinary insights from them in the course of conducting our activities. I wanted to kind of personally take a minute. I stepped onto the Board of Trustees. My first meeting was in 2019 in February, and I remember sitting at the table with Henry, and at that point the stock market was at like an all-time high, and the church was doing, it just seemed like there were a lot of green lights out there, and of course, at that point COVID was a rumor, And what's been extraordinary, I think, is the response of all of you to all of the challenges that came up, personal challenges and financial challenges and the uncertainty that we all faced at that point. And as the chair of the Board of Trustees, one of the things I always kind of fell back on was that there was this great group of people, this extraordinary group of people, and so whatever unknown challenges were coming at us, there were people to face it. There were experts in all of the different things that were going on. So I really wanted to thank the congregation for everybody's ongoing support. The underlying story of the roof is the extraordinary generation of everyone here, the time and the talents and the financial resources that people are willing to contribute to make this, to rise up to the challenges that come up before us. And so I see that as we look forwards and the kinds of things that we're going to face. I know that we have the talent, the resources, and the financial opportunity, or the financial resources to face those challenges. So I look forward to the next couple of years as we face the challenges that people are starting to articulate here. So thank you all, and thank you to the ministers and everyone else who makes FCCOL what it is.
Thanks, Dan. And so finally, we have the treasurer's report, or T. So I know some of you find budgets sort of boring, but I can tell you that when Bob read this to the church council, members were visibly moved. And I think, I don't know, but I think you're going to find this to be forceful yet tender. It's sorrowful, but it's also joyous. And dare I say, even sassy, yet not overly presumptuous. So, Bob, if you could, please.
having a great deal of difficulty starting this in a coherent way. I've been sitting there for the last 45 or 50 minutes with incredible trepidation as to how Tom Shearer was going to introduce me.
Just following the BS.
Right. And knowing a lot, and which I do, knowing a lot about Tom's twisted mind, it could have been a lot worse. Thanks, Tom. So the treasurer's report starts on page 17 with the text, and the summary of the 2022 results are on the following page, page 18. Sorry we couldn't get them to be facing pages, but it just didn't work. The perspective is, and you've heard a lot about it this morning, especially with Steve's sermon, is that it's such a joy to see the church almost totally reopening after the 2 or 3 years of struggling with the COVID situation. So we're now reopened and visibly vibrant again. But we did have to use some creativity in reaching a balanced financial result for 2022. You heard some about the leveling and decline of the number of pledging contributors, as well as our operations were really hit with the inflation in 2022 that you know all about. So if you look on, but we did, we managed to show a balanced financial result for 2022. If you look on page 18, which is the summary of the whole thing, you'll find up on the top line for revenues that we had budgeted some $884,000 in revenue for 2022. Every time I think about that, it's an incredibly big number. But we had to find additional revenues, which you'll see at $910,000. And that was driven, as I mentioned before, by several things. The leveling of pledges, certainly, inflation also, but some significant overruns in the property budget. If you look down on page 18, halfway down through the page, the property budget for 2022 was $134,000, and we wound up having to spend $170,000. These property increases were due to several things. Increased electricity usage. When church reopens, and especially has the White Elephant sale, our electricity bill goes up. We had significant inflation in the property supplies and repairs account, and we had two very major maintenance projects, interior and exterior painting earlier in the year, and then the replacement of the 10 lighting bollards around the property. Site maintenance expenses went up. We no longer have a group of garden maintenance volunteers, so we are now paying for a professional garden maintenance person. And very importantly, driven by some significant deferred renovation and repairs needed in a pilgrim house. It's been needed for a long time. And so that drove the property account. So there was the need then to find additional revenues. And if you look on page 19, about halfway down, you'll see that the pledges and offerings indeed came in right on budget. And there are some gives and takes there. some reduction in the pledge giving, but offset by the resumption of the White Elephant Sale and the Ladies Benevolent Society coming through. So the pledges and offerings came in on budget, as did the interest and dividends, as you might expect. Most of that is the contribution from the endowment fund. But under other income, we had to find some more money. We already, at the bottom, you can see under PPP loan proceeds, we had already last year budgeted to use $66,000 of the PPP loan forgiveness. But we needed even more than that. And so 2 lines up, you'll see the transfers from contingency fund. We have some other accounts on the balance sheet that we were able to utilize. Principal among them, an account that was contributed to 2 years ago, which we call special reserves. And once again, was an outpouring of the congregation who came through with unsolicited contributions to say, hey, if you need this, because we know that next year is going to be tough, or next 2 years, here's some money. So individual contributions put another $60,000 on the balance sheet that we were able to utilize. So in the summary for 2022, it's tempting to say to ourselves that this property overrun might have been a one-time situation that wouldn't recur. But we also have to understand that our property is large and complex and aging, so those surprises can often happen again. And even to underscore, we had to initially use $66,000 from our PPP loan part of the balance sheet. So obviously, we were very, very fortunate to have these reserves. There's just no question about it. They kept us really going. However, these one-time balance sheet transfers are not inexhaustible. And as I'll mention later on in the budget discussion, they're not, a lot of them aren't there anymore. But anyway, we finished the year in good shape, and thanks to the generation of this congregation, which we've talked about earlier, for supporting. Even though we talked a little bit about the number of pledging contributors going down, those who are contributing are stepping up, because over the last 2 or 3 years, the average pledge, contribution, and pledge and then contribution, the average per household contribution has gone up from somewhere around $1,750 to almost $2,000. So the people who are, all of you who are contributing, are really stepping up, and that's just so incredibly important. The rest of the report is on the next 4 or 5 pages, an account-by-account listing, which, if you care to look at that, is when you go home, is a good cure for insomnia. But what we try and make sure that we get across is that our financial situation in all of its detail is totally transparent to the congregation. So I encourage you to look at it, ask questions, call us, and we'll explain all about it that we can. Questions for the treasurer's 2022? Thank you. I think I'm still up, Tom, unless you would care with another creative introduction for the budget. I'm sure you have it up your sleeve. Okay, the next subject is the 2023 proposed budget, which we're going to ask you to approve in a minute or two. That discussion starts on page 28, and I always like to highlight page 28, which takes a look at our budget in a totally different way than just the financial numbers. Sometimes we tend to get, I think, too deeply into the weeds when we look at each line item and how much we're spending on salaries and how much on property and how much on paint and how much on office supplies, and we get into the details, which of course we have to understand. But when we took a look at our budget and looked at each line item to see where it was actually dedicated to, you come up with this pie chart on page 28, which is surprisingly, what is surprising to me is the almost equal investment in the 6 primary missions and ministries we have of this church. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as we look at the details of our financial situation. All right. So once again, I couldn't do this on the facing page. The text for the 2023 budget is on page 29. And just over it on page 30 is, again, the summary without going into detail by detail by detail line item. And so once again, on the revenue situation, the top 4 lines, we're proposing, again, a higher income that we're going to need to support our operations in 2023. So we're proposing revenue of $917,000 versus a budget last year of $884,000. And this was really driven by several substantial needs. Well, two assumptions first that the Board of Trustees unanimously felt was very, very important. And the first was a 4% increase for the compensation of the church staff. Not only we're catching up from COVID, but catching up from extraordinarily high inflation this year. And so the board was very adamant about not balancing our budget on the back of the staff compensation. And the second assumption was to make sure that we maintained benevolence giving at the same level, which is down on the bottom of the page, at the same level of $80,000. So staff compensation and benevolence giving were high on the list, and that was the challenge that we had now to put together the 2023 budget. So on the right-hand column, you'll see the red numbers are where things are a challenge from last year. The ministers and lay employees lines, a third of the way down, two-thirds of the way down, reflect the 4% compensation increase. The next big item was, again, the property account. And the energy costs really hit us in the stomach this year. Our heating oil expenses are going to go up 80% because we had to renew our annual contract with the oil company in October, right when the energy prices were at pretty much an all-time high internationally. And electricity rates are going to go up 50% this year. Eversource has raised their generation rate 100%, but since our electricity bill is balanced between delivery and generation, The net effect for us will be 50%. So those were big hits. We did realize some savings, which again may not be repeatable, but in order to make the budget, the board, the endowment committee agreed to a 1-year forgiveness of the loan we've been paying to the endowment fund for the last 6 or 7 years. So that certainly helped. But in order, and that did help. But the big hits of compensation increase and missions and property required even some more money. We had to find some more. And so you'll find where we got that on page 31, which is the detail of where our budgeted revenues are coming from. And once again, pledges and offerings, even though a little lower, are manageable. The other income of interest and dividends was up from 2022, mainly because of just excellent performance of the endowment fund over the last 3 years. But still, we needed some more money. Under PPP loan proceeds for the 2023 budget, we are inserting $37,825. And that now is the end of the 2 PPP loans we got in 2020 and 2021. And so we needed some more. So 2 lines up again, transfers from the contingency fund, various accounts on our balance sheet, plus a couple of historic funds that have been donated almost 20 years ago, which are at the discretion of the ministers, we could utilize. So again, we're able to, fortunately, propose a balanced budget, which was, again, another requirement of the trustees. They wanted the congregation to see a balanced budget and to understand the implications of what that was. So it's balanced with all the caveats that I just described. When you vote, if you do, I hope, to approve this budget, I want to make sure that it's in the minutes. 2 technical items need to be in the minutes. One is that the IRS requires that the congregation or a governing board every year approves the payment of housing allowances to our ministers. And the housing allowances to Carlene and Laura are in lieu of us providing their actual house, as you know. And the IRS allows that to be tax-free to the ministers. But they also require that the governing board approve that. And the second is another technical item, which is the contribution of the endowment fund to our budget. And this year, 2023, on page 31, that endowment contribution will be $134,000. Over the years, the endowment fund has been incredibly instrumental in utilizing some of its growth to support the church operations. However, don't go to sleep, the church bylaws say that if the endowment contributes more than 5% of our budget, it needs congressional approval. So I just wanted those 2 technical items to be understood specifically, that the housing allowance and the contribution of the endowment are part and parcel of your approval of the budget. So Tom, I guess, can I ask the congregation for a Motion to approve? This is your job, actually.
I think I'll defer to the master.
So I will introduce a motion to approve the 2023 budget as proposed in the annual report. Becky? Second? I heard a number of them. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. I have a couple, thank you very much. I have a couple of other comments. I know a number of people this morning have already talked about what a wonderful staff we have. And so I'm going to put on my administrator's hat now and just add a little more to that, if you'll allow me. Our administrative staff includes Odile, Julie, Mark, Bill, and Joni May. Odile Irakiz's contribution as our office manager is just extraordinary. She is a great office manager. She's a good ambassador for the church, and her computer and internet skills are without without parallel in my experience. Just in the last year, in the last week, for example, she had to publish the worship bulletin, had to put out the weekly email blast, and publish 550 copies of the monthly newsletter and 150 copies of this 60-page document. That, in a nutshell, that's Odile. Julie Marjakej, our bookkeeper, some of you may know from some years ago as Julie Skakoza. She has now returned to us after a 5-year unauthorized absence. She's laughing back there. Julie was with us from 2013 to 17 and is an extraordinary, her skills go way beyond just bookkeeping. She's a great assistant to me. So welcome back, Julie. And she also adds just a wonderful amount of cheer to the church office. Every day when she's there, her cheer just spills over onto the rest of us. Mark, our sexton Mark, as you know, his traditional nickname is Mark Tell the Story. And, but in between all that, he keeps the place going and set up and take down and does a lot of repairs. He's just invaluable. And Bill Slavinsky, of course, who we mentioned, really manages the security of the whole place by unlocking in the morning and inspecting, and locking up at night and inspecting again, and taking care of the trash and recycling. He's just a very steady, conscientious person. Joni May has been also mentioned a couple of times today, and I'm sorry she can't be here, but she can listen to the recording, Henry. I think I made these comments last year. When Henry presented the clerk's report, it was just one page, and it had about 10 numbers on it. And so you would be forgiven if you were to react by saying, so what's the big deal? What does a church clerk do? That's one page, 10 numbers. I'll tell you what she does. That one-page report is very misleading. She manages a 1,000-person database for our congregation and keeps it up to date daily. She manages all the weddings that take place in the church. She manages all the interments in the memorial garden. She records all the baptisms, weddings, and memorials. She provides very detailed information to the Board of Stewardship every year for their campaigns. And she does all this as a volunteer in 10 hours a week. We've offered to pay her a couple of times and she refuses to be paid. So my message about Joni is don't let the one-pager fool you. So we have a great team. They're wonderful to work with. A lot of it is behind the scenes and under the radar, but I'm grateful to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. So I think you just get a sense of the remarkable amount of work that Bob and the front office team do on an annual basis. And in the case of Bob, and I know the rest of the team, it really is a labor of love that we very much appreciate it. So now I'd like to present the slate of officers, board members, and deacons emeriti to the congregation. So if you could take a couple minutes and review pages 52, 53, 54, and 55 of the annual report, that gives you a kind of complete listing of those officers, board members, and deacons. So I'll give you a moment to take a look at that. Brutal. Yeah, good enough. So before we vote on those nominations, I'd like to ask Deb Hemingway up to offer a few remarks on the selection of the deacons emeriti.
I have a fun contribution. So each year, the Board of Deacons has the privilege of appointing one or two people as deacon emeritus, an honorary position recognizing outstanding service to our church community. So this year, we are pleased to say that Eunice Taylor and Faye Richardson have been chosen for this honor, and I'm hoping they'll come forward even if it's a little bit. It was supposed to be a surprise.
It was.
So Eunice has been a member of the church for many years, singing in the choir for a few decades and pitching in to be helpful in countless small ways. But almost 10 years ago, she took the reins of our sewing and craft group called the Ladies Who Stitch. And from there, since she was fully retired from her long teaching career, Eunice swung into action here at the church with astounding energy. The Ladies Who Stitch, which is made up predominantly of women, but not entirely, met almost every Monday throughout the year, even during COVID, as I understand. They share a precious fellowship, which Eunice bolsters in countless ways, and they create absolutely beautiful handmade items that raise money for the Ladies Benevolent Society and ultimately the church's many missions and outreach programs. Under Eunice's leadership, they've helped to send hundreds of beautiful dresses and other items of clothing to Haiti through the Crosby Educational Fund. And they've helped to grace all our homes with beautiful items that have the added beauty of being purchased for a good cause. Eunice, we are not sure what we would do without you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Faye. Unfortunately, it seems that Faye might not be here now. Now I was guessing that might be the situation. But Faye also has sung in the choir for a couple of decades, and in that role, she has helped support the critical fellowship that makes our choir unique. Faye has served on the Board of Trustees and the Board of Missions. She's traveled intrepidly to South Africa more than once as a participant in the mission journeys. But very quietly, and you can see this if you're sitting up there in the alto section, but very quietly, she's consistently by the side of the Hamu family as a guide and mentor, an adopted mother and grandmother. And also because of her work with the International Rescue Committee in New York City, she's been able to advise the Board of Missions every time we need research on how to help with our mission dollars in crises all over the world. Faye, wherever you are, we know where you are, we love you, we're grateful for all that you have done, and we're not sure what we would do without you either. So thank you both for doing this as well.
Thanks, Deb. I'd now ask for a motion to approve the nominations of the 2023 slate of officers, board members, and deacons emeriti. We have a movement. Do I have a second? And it's seconded. Is there any discussion on the nominees? Then can all in favor of approving the 2023 nominations please say aye? Aye. And those opposed? So the motion to approve the 2023 nominations is carried. The last couple of things, I'd ask if there's any old business that people would like to bring before the congregation. No? Well, how about on the new side? Any new business? Well, that's great, because that means I can hereby declare that the 2023 annual meeting of the FCCOL is adjourned. So may I ask Steve for a benediction? Oh, sorry, we've got one more. Thank you. Is Steve here? There he is. There's the man. Thank you.
Well, I have some good news for all of you. We have found the chair of our annual meeting in perpetuity. I hereby nominate Tom Shearer. Do I hear a second? He thinks the meeting's adjourned. I don't know. Listen, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for hanging in through all of these reports and looking at all of those numbers. But more than that, thank you for all that you do to make this community what it is. It's you, it's people that are not here right now, but you know, a church is only as good as its volunteer network. And I'm so grateful for all of you. I didn't get to offer a traditional benediction before, but it feels appropriate to do it now with the words that you're used to me saying after the end of every service. But it feels especially appropriate as we look at some of these budget numbers and as we think about some of the challenges that we do have to face in the future, even as we do so from a position of relative strength. And so I say these words as you go. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. And help the suffering. Honor all people. And love and serve the Lord, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit. And may the grace of Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you today, through the coming year, and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Go in peace.